In Pro Tools, there's a very useful feature called markers. These markers can be seen if you go into this menu to the left of your main ruler, and you can enable the markers ruler, where you can see that I've added some markers into this session. It's nearly 8 hours of recorded material, which is being edited down to less, but the markers help me recall the view options so that it is easier for me to bounce audio out of Pro Tools. So the regular way that you might find audio and select a region to bounce in a session like this is to select an area, press Alt F to zoom to selection, maybe zoom in a little bit more, and then you're going to be selecting the bounds of your piece or whatever region that you'd like to bounce. And that's an alright way to do it, but it's not the most efficient way to do it. If you need Pro Tools to show you a specific selection in the timeline to bounce to disk, and you're going to be tweaking and bouncing a specific region multiple times, it's a little more efficient to use Pro Tools memory system to help you get there with just a few strokes of your keyboard. First, select a single point or a region on your timeline. To create a new memory location, press Enter, which will bring up the new memory location window, where you can assign the location a name, a index number, which will be important later, and a type. If you have a single point selected in the timeline, then the marker type will place a diamond-shaped marker in the marker's ruler at that point in the timeline. If you have a selection in the timeline, then the marker type will still place a single diamond-shaped point in the marker's ruler, but at the beginning of the selection. So there's really no difference in using a single insertion point and a selection in your timeline if your memory location is going to be of the marker type. If you choose the selection type, however, this will not create a memory location that will show in your marker's ruler. A selection type memory location is useful because if you need to select the same region in the timeline repeatedly in order to export it, in this example I have multiple songs throughout the timeline which will all need to be exported individually. Instead of making a selection again each time I'd like to bounce a region, I can create a selection type memory location and configure it so that Pro Tools Edit Window view, as well as the selection in the timeline, can be recalled at any point later on with just a few keystrokes. I'm going to name this selection Test and leave the index value as 2. I'm going to set this memory location to recall zoom settings, track show hide, and track heights, this specific window configuration, in addition to the current selection. This just means that whenever I activate this memory location, we should see in the edit window exactly what we are seeing right now. Just press OK to create the new memory location. Now I'm going to press Alt-A to snap the view horizontally to the entire session. And I'm going to select a random point in the timeline so that we can test if this marker works correctly. With this 8-hour wide view, we can't really see the original area where we made a selection memory location. And as I've clicked outside of that selection, the original selection has been lost. However, if you press Ctrl and then 5 in the numpad, it will bring up the memory locations window, where we can click on our test memory location, and just like that, it snaps Pro Tools Edit Window view parameters, as well as the timeline selection, back to what we saved into this selection type memory location. I'm going to back up a minute and press Alt-A to zoom to the session horizontally. If you know the index number of the memory location you're trying to access, which is 2 in this case, you actually don't need the memory locations window to be open to access that memory location. To activate any memory location using the keyboard alone, press period on the numpad, followed by the number of that memory location, followed by period on the numpad again. In this case, that'll be period 2 period on the numpad. There you go. For this session, I kind of came up with my own system for numbering memory locations. Since the WC piece is the 4th song in the session, I used the number 40 to denote the start of the piece. I used the number 42 as the index of the marker at the end of the piece. And for the memory location, which will recall the selection of the entire piece, I used 41 as the index number. So if I type period 41 period on the numpad, it will snap the view and selection to the WC piece. The 8th piece is by Vidor, so if I type period 81 period on the numpad, it will snap my selection to Vidor. This way I can make minor clip gain and volume automation adjustments, as well as minor edits to crossfades between takes, and then export each piece individually in an efficient and very repeatable way. I hope you find this information useful.